Hey there, I'm Sharon Welch, and welcome to A Brave Journey, the podcast to help you throw out those legacy belief and identity stories that you've been lugging around on autopilot for decades, so you can jump back in the driver's seat of your aliveness again. When you change your mind, you change your life. Are you ready? Let's get into it. It'll be fun. So I alluded last week to this idea that there are systems that we live in that are intended to keep us right where we are. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that. This concept first sort of became visible to me. I'm reading this book called The Pivot Year by Brianna Wiest. Brianna Wiest has a number of books. This book is constructed in a way where the idea is there are these passages that you read like one a day, and maybe you journal about it, maybe you just read it and think about it. There's a lot of different ways that you can use this book, but in general, there's a different thought or piece of prose or something that Brianna writes to get you to think about things in your life, how to move forward, personal development sort of things. So day 27 really resonated with me because she talked about these systems. She talks about how when you're in that unawakened autopilot state that, we've talked about several times here in this podcast, when you're in that autopilot sort of vibe, the power that you have is fully externalized. All of your power is based on external things. Your job, your family situation, your financial status, your things, your experiences, whatever it is, it's all externalized. So you put faith into these systems and rules and structures that are around you. So whether it is something like the structure of your family, the structure of your job, the structure of the town you live in, the structure of the country you live in, the structure of, whatever it is, when you're fully on autopilot, all of your faith goes into these systems because our belief system that we inherited has conditioned us to believe that that is the way things are, right? We've talked about this a million times. But she goes on to write, the thing is about these systems is they were set up to never have any intention of moving you past where you are right now. That's the key. Those systems were put in place to create a sense of control and safety for the people who created the system. And arguably for you, although I suppose that's debatable, right? Just like we've talked about for belief systems, your belief systems were not given to you with ill intent. The people, the society, the family unit that gave you those belief systems gave them to you fully expecting that those were the beliefs that you needed to have to be normal, to be accepted, to be loved, to be successful. So these systems, we all agree to live within them for all those same reasons that we've talked about as we peel back some of our own belief systems. But those systems are set up exactly for what we don't want, which is to keep us exactly where we are. So she goes on to say, at some point, you burn out, you become exhausted or frustrated. You feel like maybe you're broken because these systems, these structures just aren't working for you anymore. And so that's when you sort of peek into the internal world, right? You've read the book or gone to the seminar or hired the therapist or coach or went into the woods on a yoga retreat. I don't know, whatever it is you did. And you look inward and all of a sudden you get a glimpse of this power inside you and the possibility for change that it entices you with, right? And so then what do? We tilt fully the other way. We run with that power. We're so excited. And we then become the center of our own universe. And when we're in that state, we just assume that everything should bend to our will, reform around us at the center. Everything should just sort of line up around us because we've tapped into this internal personal power, right? But then what you start to realize at some point is all of these things that you insisted had to be created, had to be manifested. They, for some reason, just weren't really turning out the way that you had planned, the way that you envisioned them turning out. So then you're like, okay, well, crap. What am I doing wrong? Well, you're not doing anything wrong. What you're starting to see is really the true authentic journey when you begin to realize that by grasping onto that how, by seeing yourself as the center of the universe around which everything else must order itself, you realize you have no way to account for or control every single other human who is trying to do the same thing that you are. Their wants, their needs, the timing of their joy and abundance that they're manifesting in the world. So you realize that while you've broken out of the systems and structures that you inherited, that you've been living in on autopilot, and what you've traded that for is a structure of yourself that also keeps you from being fully authentically realized as a person, that allows you to manifest the things that you want. This is where Brianna says the authentic journey begins. When you start to see the nuances in being able to balance what is yours to deal with, what your job is, what is it your job to handle, and what do you need to release? What is it you should be actively reaching for, and what needs to be allowed to come to you without forcing? When should you be teaching? And when should you be learning? When should you be speaking? And when should you be listening? When you should exert your free will and when you should surrender. That's a hard one, right? Free will is an amazing thing, and it's easy to get carried away with, and it's easy to overuse. When you get to that next level of your journey where you understand that free will is a very powerful thing, but it also must be used in a discerning manner, it's huge. And the other side of exerting your will, this idea of surrender, is tough for a lot of us because surrender, we're often taught, means giving up. Maybe it means failing, when really surrender is just allowing what needs to happen, allowing the universe to take on its role without us needing to try to control it. Think about that for a minute. Some of you may have had antibodies around the idea of surrender. We are conditioned to believe we need these hard-hitting 5-year plans with 1,000 steps, and we got to, have metrics around all of these things that are going to get us to this ultimate vision that we have for ourselves, this goal, this accomplishment. But what that type of system does is it puts us in the way of things we have no business meddling with. Our job is to know ourselves. Our job is to recognize our truest, highest, most authentic self, and what that looks like for us to live in that truth. It is not our job to figure out how that life crafts itself and comes about. It's not our job. As an individual human being, our window to the world is the tiniest of slivers. We are limited by our experience. We are limited by our knowledge. We are limited as far as what we can see in the art of the possible. We can't possibly see the infinite number of ways to get what it is we want. The universe, on the other hand, sees everything. And not just our little sliver, everybody else's little sliver, and all the slivers that nobody sees. Not to get too woo-woo on you, but think about it rationally. Is it possible at all for me, for you, for anyone you know, to be all-knowing as to every possible outcome, every possible decision point, every possible action to get you where you need to be? It's impossible, right? How many times have we set a goal for ourselves, but we're so sure that we know the way that it has to happen? We grip so tightly to that And then when it doesn't turn out the way that we think it should, we think that's on us. We think that that thing that we were trying to get clearly wasn't meant for us. When really all it means is we try to do, quote, someone else's job in finding the how. Because once you grasp onto the how, all of the other potentialities, all of the other paths, all of the other decision points, all of the other cards that could fall into place to manifest that thing are wiped off the table because we've locked in. We now, not only can we not see it, those other options are no longer available to us. The surrender is trusting yourself and trusting your connection within the universe to lead you where you're trying to go. And you're going to know this because you're tuned into yourself. You're going to know this because you're making it your business to take that next aligned step, the thing that makes sense. You're paying attention to what seems like a coincidence. You're taking advantages of opportunities that pop up for you. Your gut is telling you what the next thing to do is, not the next 10 things, because the whole universe is shuffling for everybody's stuff at every single second of the day. And so it's that part of the journey where we realize that it's only through that surrender sometimes that we can have something greater than we could have made up on our own. So for me, this passage in Brianna's book just was so thought-provoking because it's exactly what we've been talking about. And there's this continuum, there's this cycle in our personal development around this. When you first come out of autopilot and you start to reevaluate and recurate your belief systems, that's great. And yet we're still probably living in these structures that are built to keep us right where we are. One example, a couple examples of that, our education system has largely been unchanged for decades and decades and decades. Our education system was really originally created to take young minds and condition them to be good fits in a factory system once they became adults. So when you go into a school system, a school structure, you are molded to learn, be, act a certain way that is optimal for being sent out into the world, into the industrial system. It's a feeder to the industrial system. When you go into the military, you picture, I'm not suggesting everybody who goes into the military is ragtag. You got a ragtag group of people that all are different ways, all think different things, come from different backgrounds. And what the military does is they kind of push all that aside, get down to the basics, and they rebuild all of those people to a common goal, to a common standard, to a common way of being and thinking. They condition and train for the system that they need these people to function in our country's military, in any military. When you go to a job, that company has a mission. If it's a publicly owned company, they have stakeholders, shareholders who rely on the accomplishment of that mission. So a structure is set up around what someone has decided is the optimum way to get to that goal. And everyone within that system is conditioned to and rewarded for existing and excelling within that system. So you start to have this awakening, but because these systems are so pervasive in our lives, we don't even see them necessarily. It's sort of like the fish probably has no concept of water. We don't really have a huge concept of the air that we breathe. It just is. So that's how these systems work. But it's only as you move forward in that journey, then you realize those systems are set up to condition us to be exactly where we are in those systems, right? Then when you see that, you become enlightened to that, we get all excited. We look inward. We see the power that we have. And then everything becomes about us at the center. It's just the next phase. I just think Brianna in the pivot year just laid this out so well. You can see yourself in this continuum. And when you're in that, I'm in the middle of the universe now, I have all the personal power. That's when we get out of our lane by thinking it's then our job to enlighten, tell, instruct, force others to know what we know, to experience what we experience, to do what we do. There's a joke, and I do not intend to offend any vegans, but there's the joke that goes, how do you know if someone's a vegan? And the answer being, oh, don't worry, they'll tell you. So in the personal development journey, likely many of us have been the vegan, right? We get a little bit of self-knowledge, we get a little bit of awareness of how things really work, and we pulled ourselves out of beliefs and systems that no longer work for us, and we're so excited about it. We're telling everybody. We're giving everybody advice. Everybody's rolling their eyes. They're like, seriously, what are we doing right now? Who the heck are they? We're just so excited. It's well-intentioned. We just want everybody to experience what we've experienced. And so that's what we do. And because we're doing that, and because now we know better, we think that's our license to control, direct other people's paths as well. Now, I'm not suggesting that your tribe or your family or your therapist, your coach or your boss or your mentor can't be a facilitator for your path. But a lot of times when we are still immature in that journey, where it starts is us as the great orator, as the leader, as the shepherd of the flock. Our way works. Everybody come to my way. How far does that get you? Not really very. And then at some point, you realize that, that's not really working the way I expected. And all these things that I thought I was going to manifest for myself, they're still not going the right way. Right? And as Brianna says, and I'll say it again, that's where the authentic journey begins. It really is. Think about the times that you've had these realizations and you get to this crossroads that says, all right, now I need to decide, is this my job? Should I be putting effort here? Or is this something I need to let go? It's the letting go that's the hardest part. I think we all know that. But it's just so important to remember that the letting go, the surrender, does not come from a place of weakness. It's really from a place of strength. It's really a superpower to be able to do that, because it really is the ultimate breakaway from the conditioned environments that we all have lived in that suggest that we have to be in control of everything, and that the only other state of being, if you're not fully in control, is that you're out of control. If you can think about surrender as, it's really the ultimate in self-control, to set aside, let go, let flow the things that are not yours to control. And it takes work, and it takes mindfulness and presence to do that. But that's really, when you're at that place, that's where you really start to see the impact of the internal power that you do have, not as the center of the universe, but as imagining and manifesting how your best life looks, and then trusting yourself and the energy, power, universe around you to lead you to that in the best way possible. And as an aside, the other thing, it might come across as, oh, all of these beliefs that we've inherited and all of these systems that we've been conditioned to live in are bad and terrible, and I need to throw them all out. That is absolutely not the case. For many of us, there are beliefs and systems that absolutely resonate with and work for us. And that's great. My ask of you, what I'm suggesting, is that you need to reclaim the power to decide that, or reiterate, reconfirm that for yourself. rather than just going along on autopilot, assuming that all of those things are working for you. It is no sin to question. It is no sin to test. If you are feeling any level of dis-ease or discomfort in your world or the way that your life is unfolding, that's your invitation to start there. Start with the belief system that you've just assumed is correct. Start with the systems and structures that you have agreed to live within and may not even consciously be aware of. Reaffirming that they work for you is just as powerful as realizing that they don't. And for the things that are working for you, even those sometimes, even things that you love and think are great, you may decide when you think about it deep down that they need to change for whatever reason. That's you. That's you. Your reason is you, but it does happen. There was another book, I'm a big reader, you'll find, another book I just finished reading for pleasure, not for personal development, a book called The Impossible Brightness by Jessica Bryant Klagman. And she had a quote in there that I thought was so powerful, and it's very fitting in this discussion about the recurating of your life and why it's okay to change your mind and do something different or not. And the quote is, breaking away from one life to choose another often does not have clean edges on either side. You could have a nice life, good job, loving family, and still need to leave or change. Both can be true. And sometimes the leap is not without some regret. Powerful, right? And this was in a work of fiction, The Impossible Brightness by Jessica Bryant Klagman. I just thought that was such a great encapsulation of what we're talking about here. Your belief system and the structures that you choose to live in are not inherently evil. However, it is important for you to wake up, get out of autopilot, and just reconfirm for yourself what's true or not. That's the power. Not in busting down all the systems, rage against the machine, throw out all your beliefs, unless that's what works for you. It's asking the question. So this week, take some more time to ask yourself the question. And I'd love to hear some of your answers. Hey, thanks for listening to A Brave Journey. I'm so happy you were here. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review, and share this with a friend who could benefit too. See you next time.